mode. There we go. We are here with Dr. Alperin, who is going to be our speaker for this lecture. The On One Foot faculty lecture features local Jewish faculty and staff here in Memphis, Tennessee, who they come and share their latest research, their areas of academic expertise. And we are so glad to have you back, Professor Alperin. I'll let you introduce yourself more formally, and then you can kick us off and get us started.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. It's good to be back. Saw some of you. I know Hal was here 2 years ago when I was here. And it's so fun to see Erin, one of my former students, here. And well, welcome. And I don't think we have a big group today. I tend to be more on the practical side of higher ed. I know you hear from a lot of speakers, Dan Unowski, and others who I say are true scholars. They talk about their research in the field, and they talk about a lot of interesting stuff. I kind of see things, as Erin knows me, I taught a lot of intro to education. I taught teachers to teach up until a year ago at CBU, when I went out on my own as an independent consultant. So now I work with different universities, and I do work with some K-12 schools, but mostly universities. I always do I call it the 30,000 foot picture. We look at everything from a holistic point of view, everything from accreditation to faculty management and processes to curriculum development. So that is what I do now. So, like I said, I talk about I like to talk about issues in education, and so hopefully you weren't looking for a scholarly work out of this. I joined CBU's faculty over 20 years ago. The attractiveness of a school like CBU to me was that I got to be a practitioner for the rest of my life, and I was not a publisher. So that kind of makes me a little different than a lot of your faculty speakers. So when Sophie and I talked about what I would talk about today, I think 2 years ago I talked about how the pandemic was impacting K-12 and higher ed, and 2 years later, I'm still talking about that, but I'm going to put a spin on it today and talk a little bit about the state of higher education nationally, locally, and I mean, actually, I see everybody on this call is local. So I'll talk a little bit nationally, a lot locally, and then how the student loan crisis has impacted higher education. Erin, I'd be real interested with your studies now, actually working on a degree particularly in higher education, how you see this at the university level being there right now. So I am going to share a PowerPoint with you just to keep me on task, just because I need to be kept on task. Okay, let me see if I can find my PowerPoint. Here it is. Okay, Sophie, I hope I can flip through. Oh, yeah, look, I can. Okay, so if at any point you all can't see my screen, just yell at me, and I'll go back. I'll repeat whatever you need me to do. So like Sophie said, I was university faculty for 20 years at CBU, and now I am on my own as an independent consultant. And like I said, I work a lot with university faculty, and what I'm seeing is what everybody is hearing in the news about declines in numbers and the impact of the student loan crisis. I remember 2 years ago, I said in the faculty lecture series that we are not going to be able to blame COVID for everything going forward. We were allowed to do it for a few months. And I remember at the time in 2020, I said to my faculty, we're gonna take the next few months, starting in March until the end of the school year when they sent us all home. We're gonna throw mud at a wall. I'm gonna hope it sticks. But after this, we we need to pull ourselves up and make this quality education. We can only get away with this Band-Aid for a little while. So I will say that 2 years later, universities that wound up blaming COVID for all their problems are tanking about now. Unfortunately, I was part of one of those. And it's a sad situation. It really is, to see a place that I worked for so long struggling so much with enrollment and financially. Thankfully, I say we as if I'm still on faculty. I'm not. I just gave my heart and soul to them for so many years that I hate to see this happen to them. But thankfully, they are surrounded in the Midtown area by 2 other great universities, and while it will be a loss for the city, I'm glad we are not losing all of higher education in the city. But essentially, schools that didn't fare well in the pandemic wound up just not making good choices. I kind of sound like I'm talking to a 3-year-old. They didn't make good choices, but they didn't. And the ones who pushed through did not lower their standards, did not lower their tuition, did not make it a free-for-all. Come to us. We're gonna do away with our ACT scores, and we're gonna give you 75% off tuition. The ones who didn't do that, it seems to be the ones that really survived. I was so impressed by Rhodes through the pandemic. Not only did they not allow their freshman class or anybody's class on campus, I believe in the 2021 school year, but they kept their enrollment. They didn't even lose anyone. So they've done really well because they weren't going to use it as an excuse. But what we're seeing is, I need to move you guys a little on my screen just so I can see what I'm looking at. So sorry guys, I just kind of need to move this over a little bit. Okay, so I can see what I'm looking at. Okay, so what we saw was but overall, even though some schools struggled, what we saw was that the pandemic showed no change in students' plans to enroll in post-secondary education. What we saw were students looking for schools that were doing well through the pandemic, schools that they were still going to be able to get quality education at. Where they were enrolling was really the biggest impact. So schools that, like I said, schools that were using the pandemic as an excuse and really tanked financially and with student enrollment, it was just because of what they were doing to not keep students in the building. But we did see a change in where students were going to school. My own children were freshmen and senior at the time the pandemic hit, and it was no sweat on me. I was paying in-state tuition, and I wasn't complaining that my kids were sitting at home online and not being on campus. But what we saw a lot of parents saying was, well, if my kid's going to be sitting at home online, we can do that at the University of Memphis for $4,000 a semester instead of at a school where we're paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So we did see a little bit of changes in the way students were and families were perceiving where to go to school. We did see an overall student slump, and that is actually a technical term, student slump, that has been used in research articles, that the landscape of undergrad enrollment has declined 7.5%, but honestly, it's been declining since 2012. So the pandemic didn't hit us until 2020. The decline has been since 2012. So that certainly wasn't, the pandemic helped a little bit, but it was happening before that. 62% nationally of high school graduates enroll in post-secondary studies. So that, our graduation rate in Memphis Shelby County schools is 65%. So put that in perspective with a national average on the percentage of high school graduates actually enrolling post-secondary. When we say post-secondary, that does not necessarily mean a 4-year institution. That could be a technical school, that could be a community college, it could be a 4-year institution. Of the 20 million students who are currently enrolled in post-secondary studies, 73% of them are in some type of a public institution. So where are students enrolling? So a lot of increase in online enrollments. There are, I don't know if any of you have seen CBUs doing it. A lot of schools they're instituting what they're calling global colleges. It's the new term for this is our virtual enrollment, and that's fine. That is fine. For the last 2.5 years I was teaching, I taught online, and I thought that what my department was doing was very quality work as far as the way they were handling online studies and how they were delivering the material. So there's nothing wrong with it, but that's what a lot of universities are doing, is they're having these what they call global colleges in a way to increase their enrollment. Another thing we're seeing is students graduating early. If I could do it online, I might as well be able to do it in 3 years, and a lot of them are. The only sector that we've seen avoiding this slump in enrollment are actually very conservative Christian colleges. And where that's coming from is that they are very focused on classical education. There is not a trend to shed curriculum requirements. They actually, a lot of Christian colleges actually do not even partner with the federal student loan programs. They institute their own scholarships, they institute their own types of funding, so they don't have to meet certain requirements. And what they've done is many of these schools, and I'm talking schools like Liberty University, schools that are very, very, very heavily faith-based. They're focused on that classical education. It's the basics that they're teaching. There's no loosening requirements. There's no what is that called? Oh, Erin, we had it at CBU. What was that called when it's kind of like a make your own major, where you get to choose what I wanna do this and this, and I don't want to take calculus, and I don't want to take English 2, and I don't want to take foreign language requirements. These schools that will not adhere to those type of programs have actually proven to do better in the past several years, and their enrollment has gone up. And it's been interesting to watch that these no frills types of curriculum are actually doing better than many other universities, especially many other liberal arts colleges. Also, employers are interested in that core knowledge. What we noticed in a lot of trends in higher education, all those STEM majors, all those engineering majors, accounting, all of those vertical curriculum, you have to take Calc 1 before you take Calc 2, you have to take Chem 1 before you take Chem 2. Those majors where you can't, there's not the opportunity for a lot of choice are actually the ones many employers are seeking, just because of the emphasis on order, and on critical thinking skills. Doesn't mean that's a blanket statement. It's just a trend. That's really all I'm pointing out. A lot of universities, again, where we saw universities closing or losing students, it was a great idea to say, okay, we're just going to do away with those SAT and ACT scores. But what they found is that in doing away with those, there wasn't a whole lot of competitive nature at the school. And, believe it or not, students want that. They want to know that they're coming into a university with students who are like them, who are academically all on the same trajectory, and they actually kind of like that kind of order. So it wasn't all the higher ed is not going away, but it is causing a lot of universities to either rethink their admissions processes or unfortunately close down altogether. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening here, since everybody on this Zoom is here in Tennessee. So you might hear the abbreviation THEC, the Tennessee Higher Ed Commission, which was created in 1967, and the purpose of it was to increase the number of Tennesseans going into post-secondary credentialing. The commission is composed of the UT system, which has 7 campuses across the state. Of course, the flagship campus is in Knoxville. The Tennessee Board of Regents, which is composed of 26 applied technology schools and 13 community colleges. The locally governed institutions, there are 6 of them. So that would be University of Memphis, ETSU, MTSU. And then the TICUA is the Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities. And there are 36 independent colleges and universities. Of course, that's Rhodes, Union, CBU, Vanderbilt, anyone who's considered a private institution. For purposes of reporting, the independent colleges are not considered in reporting numbers. Only public universities are considered in any of the reporting numbers that I'm talking about. So just so you know, if I say the average ACT and someone says, but Rhodes' average ACT is a 30, well, we don't have reports from Rhodes because they are an independent university. And that goes for any type of reporting purposes. For teacher education, when the Department of Education puts out their yearly report card, and everybody's kind of going crazy. Well, what about St. George's, and what about MUS, and what about CBHS? Well, they are not reported in any kind of public documents because we're not allowed to report them. So the fact book is where I'm getting this information. It is based on the 22 facts are based on fall 21 data, and we've got there's some really interesting trends that we're seeing in the state of Tennessee. So we've seen a decrease of about 10,000 students over a 10-year period at those locally governed institutions and Tennessee Board of Regents. However, the UT system numbers actually increased by 4,000. Again, we're looking at 10 years, but whether that was the pandemic over the last few years or not, I'm not sure. But we did see those numbers increase at the University of Tennessee. When I say UT, I'm talking about the UT system, those 7 universities. Just to put in perspective, average ACT score, and this is actually at UT Knoxville using the flagship university, average ACT score is a 27. To put in perspective where we stand, where University of Tennessee stands in comparison to other universities that students, mainly Jewish students in the state of in the Memphis area tend to go to. UT's average is 27, UGA's is 27, Indiana University is 26, University of Alabama is 24. So, and this is just me saying this because I am a product of the University of Tennessee. My husband and my children are products of the University of Tennessee. So if anybody says, oh, UT's ACT scores aren't very good, well, I'm here to tell you we're right on par with other places our students are looking at. National ACT average is a 19.8. Tennessee's overall average, that's overall for every student taking the ACT, is a 19.1. So that's to put that in perspective. Other trends, like I said, that we're seeing. Sorry about that. Had to pull up my notes here. Other trends that we're seeing, if I can pull up, Sophie, I'm hoping this works. You guys tell me if you can see it or not. You know what? I'm going to pull it up. Y'all can still see my PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, just the PowerPoint.
Okay. Can y'all see this? I just pulled up the
We still see the PowerPoint.
you still see the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might need to.
I'm going to stop the share and
then reshare with the new window
and open it back up. Hang on just a second while I get to the screen that I want. Okay, can you see the it says at the top average ACT scores of incoming freshmen? Y'all can see that. Okay, so this is the fact book report. So some other trends we're seeing that I thought were really were interesting were student success rates. And what we're seeing is the retention over the past 10 years, especially in the UT system, has been about 86% retention rate among students, which what that tells us is that universities are doing what they can to keep students in their universities, whether that is offering extra help to students, more resources for students. Erin, when even 8 years ago, I would say that we weren't doing well monitoring and keeping students with disabilities. And by the time I left, we had a staff of people who were really helping with networking and ways to academically help students. So it's kind of nice to see that, that a system as big as the UT system has an 86% retention rate. So we were really, really glad to see that. Another thing we're noticing is trends that have to do with scholarships. Scholarships are they're harder to come by. They are, now I'm not talking about universities who are not doing well. The universities who aren't doing well are doing a great job trying to give away as much money as they can. Unfortunately, they're still not attracting students. But I will say that the UT system, scholarships are hard to come by. Everyone can get the Hope Scholarship. If you are a high school student in the state of Tennessee going to any Tennessee school, public or private, you can get the Hope Scholarship if you have a 21 ACT and a 3.0 GPA. It's keeping that scholarship it is really hard. I mean, sometimes my husband and I will laugh. We're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if we would have kept those kind of scholarships when we were in school 30 years ago. These kids are just up against a lot. Once you've got the scholarship, to keep it, you have to keep a 3.0. You have to keep a 3.0 at the undergrad level. So, going out to frat parties, unfortunately, isn't serving a lot of these kids well anymore. Some of their majors aren't serving them well. It is just really hard to keep these scholarships. So that's another trend we're seeing. Where I'm going with this, I'm gonna stop that share and open the other one. Again, back to the PowerPoint. So where I'm going with this is to the student loan crisis. And another thing impacting, another big trend that's happening is that we are seeing tuition increasing since 2003, 134% at private institutions and 141% at public institutions. Average student debt has doubled between 91 and 2022. The average student with student loans holds about 37,000 in student loans. The federal student loans are increasing by 25%. So how does this impact tuition going sky high at these universities? And the biggest part of this are those, some of you might have heard of those Parent Plus loans. So what's happening is that the majority of borrowers that we're seeing are families that you probably wouldn't think would be taking out student loans in the first place. It is, but this whole trend in, well, my student really wants to go to the University of Georgia. Well, the University of Tennessee is $6,000 a semester. An out-of-state student at the University of Georgia is paying about $20,000 a semester. So how are they getting there? If the families don't have the money, and most middle-class families, I won't even say most, I'll say all, no one qualifies for federal student loans because your combined family income has to be under $75,000 a year. So families are not qualifying for the federal student loan program, but what they do qualify for is the PLUS loan program. And the PLUS loan is unlimited. You can borrow whatever you want. The government is happy to give it to you, but in the government increasing the amount of PLUS loans that they're giving, it increases the amount of tuition. The only way universities keep up with everybody having student loans is to increase their tuition, which, in theory doesn't sound bad, because if you're working on a student loan, you're really not even, thinking about what the tuition is. The issue is that the majority of families who I know, their student is the one who absorbs the student loan when college is over. The parent really isn't paying that loan back for their kids. It's the students. So, and unfortunately, the return on investment is usually for students, for a 22-year-old coming out of college, usually isn't high enough to pay off, for them to pay off their student loan. So those are other trends that we're also seeing. As far, a lot of people ask about, well, are my loans going to be forgiven? Well, probably not. Right now, the US just hit their debt ceiling. So they can't pay off their own debt, no less pay off anyone's student loans. However, what I've said to students in this situation is now's a good time actually to pay your student loans, because right now the interest is on hold until August. So right now, student loans are not collecting that interest. So it might be a good time to start paying them back and not plan on them being waived. So what is the value of higher education? Is it worth all this money, all these student loans? Is the return on investment that good? I taught at a small university, and in our heyday, our accounting majors went to work for those Big 10 firms. Our science majors got into the medical schools and dental schools they wanted to go to. So reports show that how you actually get your job is about how you present yourself, and not so much your alma mater. Employers who are faithful to certain schools actually would surprise you. My son would try to get internships at FedEx. He was a mechanical engineering major. He would try to get internships every single summer at FedEx. And FedEx is very loyal to the University of Memphis. Fred Smith went to the University of Memphis. They're very loyal to the University of Memphis, and they're loyal to the University of Mississippi. So as far as internships were concerned, you were golden if you went to Memphis or Ole Miss, and you weren't so golden if you went anywhere else. So, I mean, so FedEx is being loyal to the University of Memphis, and you hear high school students all the time, "Oh, I'm not going to the University of Memphis," and I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't you go to the University of Memphis? One of the top business schools in the state is the College of Business at the University of Memphis. So we've got a lot of good stuff going on right here in the state. As in higher ed, what we talk about is exporting intellect, and how we really don't want to export our intellect. We want to keep our students in Tennessee schools, whether they're Tennessee public schools or private schools. We want to do what we can to keep our students here, which is why I brought up the comparison of ACT scores, because a lot of Jewish kids, a lot of my kids' friends, flocking to University of Georgia, IU, Alabama. A lot of our students we're losing to these out-of-state schools, and a lot of times I'll hear parents saying, "Well, University of Tennessee just isn't a good school." Well, I just showed you what the comparison of ACT scores were. So I think that the answer is we want more Jewish kids for our students, not that the University of Tennessee isn't a good school. So University of Tennessee, just so you know, it's the number 8 engineering school among public institutions in the country. And I believe in the School of Business, their logistics program is at the number 4 school. So when I hear that, I'm thinking you really probably want more Jewish kids for your students. It's not so much the education that you're perceiving that they're getting. So like I said, return on investment usually doesn't outweigh the cost of those student loans. I don't know many 22-year-olds coming out with 6-figure jobs when they first get out of college in order to pay rent, have a car payment, parents turning over the auto insurance and the cell phone and healthcare costs, who can put all that together and still pay off their student loans easily. It's also important. What I always tell my high school administrative buddies, can I just come in and talk to your students about what this means to go to college? Because I think a lot of students, they just don't understand the impact of taking out those student loans. And maybe if they did, if they realized, okay, this is what's going to happen 6 months after you're out of school, this is what you're going to be owing the government, maybe there would be more kids just really realizing what their family's financial means are, and just being a little more cognizant about where they're going to school. But students and parents alike just need more education on scholarships that are available, the importance of those educational savings accounts and 529 plans. When my daughter became a St. Jude patient 6 years ago, but my son was a freshman in college. First thing my husband and I did was look at each other and say, "Oh, thank God we've got that 529 plan," because her medical expenses were so high and we were cash flowing all of that. And we were so glad we had that 529. So Sophie, with a baby, little Max needs an ESA right this second.
Already on it.
All right. Also, not worrying about the stigma of what school you go to. I have seen one thing that I love seeing it. That we've got, I think it's a newspaper. It's called Parents. I think you see it at all those little newsstands, all these coffee shops. And one of my favorite things to see is that probably this time of year, maybe a little later in the spring, I always see they always have all the kids. Usually from the private schools, maybe some of the public schools, it depends, but they're all in their t-shirts and sweatshirts for the colleges they're going to. And I promise you, I have yet to see a year when I don't see a St. Mary's girl, a CBHS guy, an MUS guy in a University of Memphis t-shirt or sweatshirt. And that is okay. And so taking the stigma out of where are you going to school and realizing that these are institutes of higher education, and they are higher education institutes for a reason. they are all doing something right if they are still standing. And I'm not, I mean, I wrap my brain around this all the time, is why do we have such a stigma about where are you going to school? You know, the Tennessee Lottery has the not only the Hope Scholarship Program, but they have another program where you can go to a community college for free for 2 years. And most community colleges, at least Southwest and Northwest Mississippi, and there's one in Arkansas, have reciprocity agreements that if you do your associate's degree at these schools, I know the University of Memphis will take your 60 hours, CBU will take your 60 hours. I don't know about Rhodes, but they have contracts with these schools that you'll go in as a junior. You're not even going to lose any time, but here you just went to, and you got your associate's degree at the cost of, at the taxpayer's cost, of course. But I encourage students to do this all the time. Some will say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And then I've got some who will say, oh, I can't go to a community college. It's embarrassing to go to a community college. Well, what's so embarrassing about? You know, they actually, if I would have kept that other tab up for you, you can see, you want to see the ROI on people with associate's degrees and technical degrees, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked at what people with skills, what they, I mean, I have a plumber who I think is the greatest. If you want his name, I'll give it to you. He has 2 PhDs. I'm not even kidding you, but he makes more money being a plumber than he does with his 2 PhDs in religion and philosophy. So, you know, we can't discount those trades. It's important. Career and technical education is important. The truth is that a 4-year degree is not for everyone. And a 4-year degree is not for every Jewish child also. And, you know, I bring that up just because this is what the faculty lecture series is a Jewish program. I think we have a tendency to be embarrassed if our child isn't able to make it into the 4-year university of choice, or you know, oh, they want to take a break, or they want to take a gap year, or you know, they took the gap year and then they went to the university that mom and dad really wanted them to go to, and they failed out of that university. So there's a lot around that stigma, and I think about it a lot for our students. You know, I don't know, Lon and I always say we hit the jackpot. And we probably did because he and I both went to the University of Tennessee. We have an orange room in my house. We have been brainwashing our children since they were knee-high, taking them to football games, and to the point where by the time they started applying for colleges, they were like, well, I only want to apply to the University of Tennessee. And we were forcing them. We were like, no, come on, just apply to Tulane, just apply to Vanderbilt, just see what happens. And they didn't want to. The only reason our daughter was so sick that we were like, okay, just do whatever you want. But our son, because he went to CBHS, and they only graduate 200 boys a year, and at graduation in the graduation programs, they list all their scholarships. I was like, yeah, you're going to apply to all these schools just so we can list your scholarships. And he was like, fine, I'll apply to them, but I'm not going to them. Okay, fine, whatever. So, but yeah, my kids wanted to go to an in-state school, and I'm very grateful that they did. And now he's a mechanical engineer working in Nashville. Leo will graduate with an analytics degree in May. But you know, so that was it wasn't even a fight, and it wasn't even a discussion. My kids just happened to want to go to an in-state school, but I could see the stress on, I mean, now, you know, children with parents my age, you know, those you know, when they would say to us, I don't know how we're sending them to the University of Georgia. I don't know how we're sending them to Indiana University. I don't know how we're sending them here. And, you know, really just because some of them are very close to me, my first reaction is tell them no. And I think that's a hard thing also as a parent, telling your 18-year-old who has had their eye on University of Boulder or wherever, telling them no when they got in. And, like I said, trends and scholarships are really down. For an out-of-state student to go to an out-of-state school, the scholarship is minimal unless they're like a 36 ACTer and they happen to get some really good money to go there, but it is stressing parents out miserably. But I think a lot of the talks have to be with the students, and the students being cognizant enough to say, hey, mom and dad, can you afford to send me to that college? So, which I don't think is happening a whole lot. So, okay, and that's just my works cited page. So I think I unshared it. So that's what I got for y'all today. So, like I said, all of this is fact-based. A couple of those things, according, like on student loans, I did interject some of my opinion a little bit, just because, I've seen the return on investments, and, nothing makes me sadder than to see one of my friends' kids struggling to get a job, and they're saddled with student loans, and the parents are saying, well, I don't know what I sent them to that school for and paid all this money and they can't get a job. So that's, it's just hard times, but hopefully I shed a little bit of light on this for y'all. Erin, what are you seeing where you are now?
So
we need nurses desperately.
My degree. So pretty much all of what you said is what I've been studying for the past 3 years. And the main thing that I'm seeing is that, one, education is becoming more accessible, especially considering the pandemic. The pandemic pushed a lot of programs to, as you said, become global, provide more online resources. My degree has been entirely online. Pretty much every time I'm on campus, it's because I'm working. Yeah. Last semester, I was hardly on campus because my internship was an off-campus one.
Yeah.
Hello. So that's one big thing that I've been learning about. Your commentary on like diversity and stuff like that. One of the really big things that's been the focus of this entire program has been on how to handle diversity, and specifically how to handle your own identity and diverse parts of yourself in conjunction with the diverse people that you interact with as an administrator. And so that's kind of the two things that I would really think about a lot on a regular basis. I interact with students on a daily basis here, and even though my interactions tend to be small, I'm mostly just saying good morning to people, and I'm mostly telling them which way to turn their ID to swipe it through a card swipe, but it's still
someone's got to, right?
It's a way to interact with them and give them a bright, positive part of their day. And even just sitting there, I know that I'm sitting there with wearing, my Star of David. I have a Temple Israel cup. I have a Temple Israel pen in my bag. Today I'm wearing a joke shirt about it being a holiday because it's Shabbat. And especially today because of Holocaust Remembrance Day, with it, it's on my mind, I'm in a group full of a room that literally has almost 200 seats, and I'm sitting in one of them, and I greet nearly every single person who walks into this room and interact with nearly every single person. And I'm being very open about my identity, but I don't know much about them. And it can be nerve-wracking for me, but it's just the position I put myself in as someone who's working with students on this level, as an administrator / future administrator.
Right. And just a side note, Hal, I see you have your hand up. Vivian, thank you for that information. I'm not sure if Vivian asked the question, It came in to everyone, the average ACT scores for Memphis Shelby County schools. It's low. It's below the national average. But you are right, Vivian. Schools like White Station, yeah, I see that you put 27 average. Schools like White Station bump it up a little bit. But no, the majority, and that's for another lecture, Sophie. What's happening in the high schools that our scores are so low, and I'd be happy to shed light on that also. I work with a lot of that also is, are the kids learning anything? And if the ACT is written for an 11th grade level, I will guarantee you that the majority of our high schools aren't teaching 11th grade level work for them to get to that average 19 in the first place. So thank you, Vivian, for that. Hal?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, if that's okay. Well, you mentioned a scholarship that's open to everyone, that's not based on income. What was that scholarship?
So it's called the Plus Loan. It's not a scholarship.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a Plus Loan, PLUS. I
Oh,
forgot
right,
what
okay.
the acronym stands for. Parent loan for undergraduate studies. My husband's sitting on the other side of the room, and he just said parent loan for undergraduate studies. So that is a way. So the federal student loan is going to cap, because if you look at it, it's based on income. So if you make under $75,000 a year, you'll be pretty much guaranteed most of tuition paid for. But if you don't, which the majority of people, it's amazing that that's the cap at $75,000 a year. But a family making $100,000 a year is probably going paycheck to paycheck and does not qualify for that kind of money from the government. So what the government does is they put this Plus Loan in place, and the Plus Loan allows you to take out another loan on top of that. Now, the caveat to that is you start paying interest on that immediately. So whereas the federal student loan program, you're not going to pay until you're 6 months out of college. The Plus Loan, parents are paying interest on it all the way through college. And then 6 months after the child graduates, then the whole thing comes due. So, and that is, it's very scary. It's saying, okay, I'll use Vanderbilt as an example. I don't know if anybody went to Vandy. I wanted my kids to go to Vandy so badly. I don't know what I was thinking, but I wanted my kids to go to Vandy. So we take Parker as, I don't know, a junior in high school to Vandy, and there we are on the campus, and it's pouring down rain, and I think it's beautiful. And he announces to me, like the second we walk on campus, I'm not going to this school. I said, okay, I get it. Also, it didn't help that when he asked where the engineering school was, the person who was showing us around kind of looked around at his friend and said, I think they're over there somewhere. Leave it to a liberal arts college to not know where the engineering school is. So that kind of did him in. But anyway, when you walk into the information session at Vandy, they give you this nice little booklet. And in the booklet, at the bottom of the page, it says, if your family income is this much, and it was under 75,000, this is what you qualify for scholarships. And the scholarships were enormous. Like if you don't make $75,000 a year, you can practically, and your kid has a 30 ACT and a 3.8 GPA, you can practically send your child on scholarship to Vandy for with very little out of pocket. But if your family, so you go down to the bottom, if you're making 150 or more as a family, and your kid has a 30 ACT and a 3.8 GPA, they'll give you $12,000 a year. Like $12,000 a year, a family making $150,000 cannot kick in the extra $60,000 a year to pay for Vanderbilt University, especially if you have other kids going to school. Oh, and other payments. So what happens is that Plus Loan will kick in. Oh, wait, if I can get the other, okay, Vandy's going to give me 12. My kid doesn't qualify for the federal loan program. But the plus loan program, if they can give me 50 of the 60 I owe, and I'm only paying 10,000 for my kid to go to Vandy, that's a plus. Well, 4 years later, your child now owes $200,000, and you've also been paying interest on that plus loan. So it all becomes this very messy, muddy issue. So it's kind of scary when you look at it, when you look at the whole picture.
All right, just one other quick question. That was really interesting where you showed the ACT scores for the different schools and where UT ranked right at the top. And this might be a simplistic question, but do you think at all the hesitancy for students to attend more local or area schools, could that be in any cases because they want to move 6 or 8 hours away, or they don't want to be in proximity to home and all that?
100%. Oh yeah, oh, definitely. And
not a reflection on the school as much as
not at all. Not at all. My nephew just got into I keep saying University of Phoenix. It's not University of Phoenix. It is University of Arizona in Phoenix. He can't wait. He wants to go across the country. He wants to get out of Memphis. And what's going through my mind is, how are you people going to afford this? So yeah, oh, definitely. The thing I think is so funny, Hal, is that the University of Tennessee, I don't know who put the state school on the other side of the state. That's 6 hours away. Well, IU is 6 hours away. Georgia is 6 hours away. Missouri, I think, is 7 hours away. I'm thinking, you go to Knoxville and you're practically out of state. These kids aren't coming home every single weekend. So yeah, oh, definitely. I think that's definite. Yeah, I know that all of you. I mean, I know that Matt and Alex, all of you are Tulane people. So I don't know if that means that, and I think a lot of that is, Dad went there, my uncle went there, and everybody went there. I don't know if they want to stay in New Orleans, but yeah, I think a lot of that is, and especially people from here, a lot of people who live in Memphis who are not from it. Lon and I Lon's from here, I'm from Atlanta, but I went to UT. So, my kids' parents went to UT. So, like I said, we kind of brainwashed them a little bit, but, a lot of kids wanting to go where their parents went to school. So that's something also. I mean, I'm sorry, Sophie, but little Max is, going to want to haul out to California because of you. So
My parents told my brother and I, do not go to CMU. It's too expensive.
Where's that?
Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon. Okay.
I think you probably know where that is.
Yeah. I never heard it referred to as CMU. So
they call it that all the time.
Interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, I mean, these, even though we've seen this slump, I mean, undergraduate institutions are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. I just, I would love to see students just being more careful about what they're choosing and the hardship on the family. Like I said, those plus loans, everyone I know who has a plus loan, they did pay the interest for the kids, but they said, here's your present. You graduated off the payroll, you're going to pay for it now. And it's a lot of money. And the interest, I remember, I mean, I was a first generation college student. I remember the first 5 years of my married life, Lon and I were paying my student loans. And someone said to me, why are you being so quick about paying it? It's the cheapest loan you're ever going to have. Well, it is the cheapest loan you're ever going to have, but how long do you really want to pay the government for this? So, but those plus loans do not come. They're government, but they don't come as cheap. They're very expensive. I mean, it's like credit card interest expensive, like that 21 crazy percentage interest expensive. So another lecture.
Yes, I'm glad my kid is only 4 months old, so I have time to get this figured out for him.
Yes. Oh, and just an FYI, I was just playing around with it one day because I was paying Leah's last semester of tuition. It was very exciting. So I went through, I just wanted to see, what have I paid as an in-state parent? What have I paid over 4 years for my kids? And I am here to tell you, for in-state, you're looking at $100,000, no matter what. And that's for in-state tuition. And I added up their tuition for 4 years. Actually, my son, he was an engineering major. He took 5 years to get through school. I added up what it cost me to send my daughter overseas to study last year. In-state, any parent is looking at $100,000 between tuition and housing. Both my kids lived off campus for 4 years. So, and that's in-state tuition. So yeah, Sophie, amateurize that 18 years from now.
Oh my gosh.
And if you're looking at out of state, you're at least double that, at least.
Wow.
So it was a pleasure talking to all of you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Alperin. It's always a pleasure to have you. I'm glad that we were able to pick up this conversation from a few years ago, and I'm sure we'll continue to have it for semesters to come. So
I'll see you in a couple of years.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
You'll have a great day.
Bye.